This will be a good improv session because I don't have an opener. So
no
it's
opener?
Total improv.
You got sick of writing the 3 bullets back and forth kind of thing?
You know what it is?
Do more of an average standard podcast intro now?
Yeah, you know what it is? It's June gloom.
That's what dude, it has been gloomy here. I'm sick of this.
Yeah.
I've had just about enough of this.
But what's not too gloomy is every company now, AI. That's the only thing. It's just like it's cloudy every day, and every day there's another company that's adding AI to their processes.
Yeah, it makes the tech in FinTech Flo pretty easy to rip through. So excited for today's episode.
Yeah, and also excited about, or not excited. What's concerning is Reddit. So a lot of meta stuff going on here.
It's all just combined for this one.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So,
well, yeah, look through the agenda, and I'm looking forward to chatting through this stuff.
Awesome. Let's get flowing.
All right.
What's going on, everybody? It's Drew Carrick from FloQast Studios, producer here and co-host of the FinTech Flo.
I'm Mike Whitmire, co-founder, CEO of FloQast, inactive CPA.
And we've got the gauntlet of stuff, of course, starting with what's up to date in the FinTech realm, which is, I don't know, we picked the perfect time to start this podcast because
Seriously.
everything is FinTech.
It really is. Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling.
So the first thing we have here today is that this is from Accounting Today, and what else is new, but Intuit is launching an AI operating system. And part of it read that Intuit launched a new AI operating system sporting specialized custom training large language models. Forward AI announced the release of new real-time payment system. Tipalti added AI capabilities. I mean, it's getting flooded left and right. Mm-hmm. How intimidating is this for accounts? Like, I don't know. I mean, okay, there's a way to embrace it, right? And we always talk about embracing the future. This is a thing that I feel like a lot of accountants probably have, and I know I personally face this sometimes too. It's daunting with how much added technology it is. Like, you almost wish you could go back to just having just a piece of paper in front of me, debits over here, credits over here, and keep it simple.
I think that might be the first sign of aging out of technology is feeling that way. But the other thing to notice here, and this is like something that's become really apparent to me, is there's a big difference between product marketing and products coming out. And I think there's a whole lot of companies rushing to announce something, but there's not necessarily an actual product behind it. So now when I see all these headlines, I look at them really like with a lot of skepticism. It's like, okay, you said you added AI capabilities. First of all, have you actually done it? And second, what is it going to do? And then third, and to me, like one of the most important considerations here is how thoughtful were you about security and where all this data is going and what model it's going into. So I feel like there's a lot of, and again, we're in the venture capital world, and so we hear like through the grapevine how much pressure there is to just put out marketing around this stuff and content and collateral. I think a lot of it is pushing like vaporware and things that just don't exist already. So to me, the big thing is the timing of all of this. Like, I think AI is going to have a really significant impact on accounting. But the marketing of all these software companies is making it feel like it's happening faster than it actually is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, this is something I've learned with FloQast is, I always used to think product marketing and marketing was totally honest, but you've come to find out that there's a lot of overpromising that goes on, and it's like to get in the spotlight and be part of the buzz and be on Accounting Today and make sure you're highlighted in one of these articles. But like, it's probably not as far along as they're actually positioning it to be.
I mean, I'm wondering how many of these are going to turn out to be like Firefest?
There's going to be a lot of it. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of like visionary products announced that don't end up getting built because it's like once they dug into it, maybe it wasn't solving as big of a customer pain point, or maybe it wasn't technically feasible, but they put out some announcement about it. So I think I just want to caution people the timing of all this. I think PR and marketing is presenting as much faster than it's actually going to be adopted and used.
So from like the entrepreneurial lens here, there's a lot of discussion about how like anybody that just throws AI in front of anything and you go and you'll just get money to go start making your thing.
Yeah.
That seems a little confusing. I was like, who's giving this money and how exactly are they attaining it? Because if it's available, like I'll go throw AI in front of like content AI, get every content idea that you ever need created, and this is my credential and here we go. What exactly does that process look like?
So in my discussions with the VCs, there's definitely like more money being deployed with AI-backed companies, but it's not a deal where you just say I'm .ai now and people, money comes falling from the sky. It's like there's a spectrum of skepticism with any VC. And one of the really interesting things is a lot of, especially the younger VCs who had never been through a bubble before, they're feeling very burned right now. And so they're way more cautious about where they're cutting checks, even at the earlier stage. So there's more diligence occurring. So if you have an AI idea, you've executed on some of it, and it's like an idea that's actually solving a real problem, is going to be a big opportunity, you can find some money. It's not like easy to raise $100 million these days or anything like that, but someone will give you a seed check for $500,000 or $1 million to kind of keep expanding on that vision. But it's not just like everybody with AI gets it. It's, you have to still be proving yourself, and there's like a bar to getting that first check.
Yeah, you still have to have like a business model, and a way of operating successfully. Because I feel like there's often this notion where there's a disconnect between like when a company is making more than $10 million and when a company is just struggling to get to their first million. And there's just this like no man's land that nobody really understands. It's just like, and then I went down, and next thing you knew, we had 50 employees. And it's like, I started off cleaning, bathrooms. I went to 5 different people. I started cleaning, and then I built the company up to 100 employees. And like, how did you go from cleaning to having 100 employees? They never talk about that.
It's funny you mentioned that range. That is the most fascinating like phase of. Maybe not the most fascinating, but it's a really interesting part of the company life cycle. Because like at the up to $1 million of ARR, you could probably do some hand waving and raise money on that. After $1 million, it is like, do you have a repeatable business model, and are you going to get there? But there's so much stuff that happens to 10 million. It's just wild getting there. The like stuff you deal with to get there, at least in my experience, was something else. And then once you cross 10, if you're growing fast and have happy customers, it becomes a lot easier, and kind of the business speaks for itself at that point. But yeah, in that 1 to 10 range is that tricky part where you're figuring a bunch of stuff out. You have to prove a good business model, and then you got to get, with the money you have, you got to get through that whole stretch. It's funny you call it that exact. And
if I'm a VC, I'm thinking that's like the make or break range. It's like, it's not worth me investing in a thing that's not going to be able to generate more than that. Like even if I knew I could be a successful bar owner or deli owner, no one's going to give me $1 million to go open up a deli, because like, what's the return I'm going to get? I'm going to make a modest regular salary. Even if I'm completely successful, maybe I'll be, even being a little bit fancier, but like, you're not giving returns to everybody. It's like, oh, I'm so glad I invested in that like coffee shop down the block. It's like crushing it. Like, what's their annual revenue that they could really, unless you franchise out or something. So what exactly is that scalable model? And are you going to be able to surpass whatever the current market is?
That's a really good point. I wonder, that's probably a big part of why that 1 to 10 range is so tough, because it is a really risky, if you're an investor, that's a risky time to invest, because you're going to be paying a pretty good multiple. So you really need to see the path to 10 plus so that there's an exit at a really good price, or an IPO at some point down the line. So you are betting on like a bigger outcome at that point. Whereas if you're cutting a check super early, they have no revenue, but like good product, a couple happy customers, beta customers who are free or whatever, giving them $500,000 at a valuation of like $5 million, if you have a $20 million exit to some bigger company, that's a win, right? But if you invest in a company at $1 million ARR, it's at a $30 million valuation. I'm reflecting on the good old days when those were the multiples that were coming out. Then all of a sudden, if a $40 million sale isn't that appealing, you got to get to $100 million of an exit value, or it's not a good use of time. So anyway, the AI stuff. So back to this, like coming out, I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm curious what operating system means here. And we're going to talk about GPT-4 and the CPA exam a little bit later here, but I do wonder, at this point, my big question is, how do we get to that 100% accuracy that you really need to be confident in your books and your financial records? So.
The interesting thing too about all this AI stuff is like, it's very much so, it's language based. All of this stuff. I mean, this is the weird thing for accountants, right? Because you're naturally going to think if it's finance or accounting that it's some sort of numbers AI aspect. That's a calculator. What comes down to is like the thinking behind like, what numbers do I want to punch in, and that comes down to the prompting, which comes down to the language, and it's all about language learning models essentially.
It's all LLMs, and more people are going to come out with LLMs. Or it's taking the LLM and then putting it into your specific workflow, and we'll be coming out with some of that. There's going to be more of it coming out. But I go back to just as I'm seeing it develop, I have more conviction around our original stance of like, it's going to be a great productivity tool. I think on par with the calculator, Excel, AI is going to come along. It's going to fundamentally change the job of an accountant, but not replace an accountant. It's going to allow you to do like more interesting work.
Yeah, which is perfect segue into this. Came from Goldman Sachs,
there you go.
Stability AI CEO says AI will prove more disruptive than the pandemic. And we were sort of touching on this before the show of what does it mean to be more disruptive than the pandemic? And it's not just, it's here, you do something totally out of the ordinary for 2 years and then you go back to doing things the way you were. No, this is changing forever moving forward. And you got me thinking as you're talking about like the original intent of AI and like how it can be beneficial and useful. I'm thinking about like editing a video. Hey, I really want to bring this object, like we fix the lighting on this thing. And like, I don't know the technical functionalities in the editing software, how to do that, but I could tell it what it is that I envision and what I want, and now it can go make it. And I think it's being able to instruct on the technical areas that you maybe aren't an expert in, which it kind of broadens your skill set of what you're able to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Even in that use case, let's take a step back. So as I think back to the pandemic, within a 1 week time frame, our like whole world got flipped upside down, and just the speed at which that occurred, even AI can't match that speed at which it was like, oh shit, virus, lockdowns, done. Let's all hang out for a while, and like we're all in solitary confinement effectively for a period of time. So when I think like very literally about it, it's already been 6 months and it hasn't been that extreme, right? So I don't know. But yeah, as we look at what was the lasting impact of COVID, and you made a really good point, like one of the lasting things is still work from home. Like there's a lot of remote work, and that's a result of COVID coming along. So that's like a really good long-term play or change. I can't think of, I'm probably wrong, but I can't think of like many other massive world changes that are going to be permanent as a result of it. Like masks have gone away. Testing isn't a regular part of our life anymore. It's just it's not holding there. But yeah, like we were saying, AI, that it's going to have a big change and it's going to be permanent. That's I think the big difference between the pandemic and AI here. So in some ways, I think like it's not going to be more disruptive this year or next year, but when you pick your head up in 2035, it's going to be very, very disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's like it's like the invention of the light bulb, right? Which it just or electricity, how to manifest electricity. It's that sort of thing. Whereas I kind of put the pandemic more in line with like historical events. World War II or the Great Depression, right? The Great Depression led to, for a time, it was like we got to hunker down and like figure out how to get food in soup kitchens. Eventually that passed, but things did end up lasting, such as Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all those sorts of things, which were a result of that event happening.
That's a really good point. I think I think what we're arriving at is this is kind of a dumb comparison.
Yeah.
Like, don't compare a historical one-time event to like a technological innovation that's going to be with us forever. That's probably not. Yeah. I think that's the gist, the main takeaway from this one.
So one of the pieces here that was quoted from this article was we figured out how to make humans scale. And that was said by Ahmad Mastaku, founder and CEO of Stability AI, told an audience at Goldman Sachs 2023 Disruptive Technology Symposium in London. And that's like an interesting way to use it. It's like we figured out how to enable humans to scale. Because normally you think of that scaling in the forms of a business or of revenue or technology, but this is it's human technology.
Well, businesses are a collection of humans getting stuff done. And so if you really, when you say, when we talk about we want FloQast to be more scalable, it is about like allowing people to do more stuff and get more done and be more efficient around it. And so at the end of the day, when you talk about efficiency and scalability, it is like, how do we make everyone at the company more efficient? And this presents massive efficiency gains. And I think what's nice is it can be adopted at the individual level. Traditionally with scaling and doing things more efficiently, it almost had to be like a centralized mandated function from the company that's then used by everybody. And some people adopt it, some people don't. But it's been really cool talking to different people around FloQast and hearing about how they're using AI just on their own without us having to do anything. We haven't said anything, and everyone's like, I don't want to do this part of the job anymore. And so you just use AI to automate it. It's like, that's beautiful. Great. Keep doing more of that stuff. And so, I found it's like, not only is it going to make humans more scalable, but I think like empower them to scale themselves and automate a lot of the work they don't want to be doing anymore, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you think about the life of a human, it's kind of a slow scale. It's this long, drawn out, whatever your raise is each year, and eventually you get the house, and eventually you have the car and the kids, and then you retire. Like, it's just this slow scale. Like how
you retire and die.
I'm acquiring wealth at a slow rate, right? But it's like, but if you think about it from an individual standpoint, like you could scale yourself, 5 or 10 times in a short period of time. Then through incorporating this if you so choose to. And they have different ways here. They had in the media, saving millions on visual effects and editing. And like I said, I think it's just crazy to be like, I could just tell it the edit that I want, and I don't have to actually know the hotkeys or the shortcuts. Like I can just say, hey, replace the color of that with this color.
Have you and the studios team talked about that? Like, have you actually tried to use any of that technology, and is it good?
So Sims is hype on researching all of this, like all of these different elements and how can we integrate them. And there's also like a podcast cutting one. So maybe at some point this podcast is able to get cut by that AI. So we're definitely trying to stay up on the forefront of what's available and how we can incorporate it. Like I said, it is, as an accountant, it's daunting of just like everything is just finding a way to integrate it. And Glassman even showed me on Photoshop the other day, you can literally tell it like, create me a photo that shows an accountant in the Big Apple who's sad because of busy season. And I want it to look like a Pixar movie style. And it just creates you 3 options just like that.
And they're good. They're not really good.
These ones were a little tough because it didn't know what to pull on, but there was another one we actually took a stock image and we said, add a coffee cup to the table. And it adds a coffee cup to the table. Add this to the table. It added paperwork to the table. And that was, change the laptop. I don't want the Mac, I want the Lenovo. And it swapped the computer. That part was like the most fascinating.
Yeah, I think you can get so that, again, that goes back to like the idea of it being so generalized they can just make something out of nothing, or are you gonna have it make edits for you and do refinements for you? And the way we were just talking about how there's product marketing at companies, they might overhype what's coming out and announce things that aren't necessarily very real. The other area I'm realizing is you got to be careful on like Twitter and Instagram and any social media, at Reddit even, because on Twitter, how many of these threads have you seen where it's like 10 uses of AI that you should be doing yesterday or whatever, and then it goes through the 10 use cases, and it's like, I don't know, that's Twitter, that's not real life. Not everyone's doing all that stuff right now, and it makes it feel very overwhelming.
You're like you're behind already.
But like, you know, you're in your Twitter sphere. We're here at FloQast in our little tech bubble, and then I'm hanging out with parents that my daughter goes to school with their kids and everything. You talk about AI, and they don't know. They're like, what's ChatGPT kind of thing. So we're so much in our bubble. I think we're freaking ourselves out a little bit, and like the media. Software companies are not helping with it. Social media people are not helping with it. The influencers who want to be like on the forefront of AI to build their own personal brand. I think it's all like a bit overhyped. I don't want to say it's not. It's going to be real. It's going to be really helpful. But the media is just making us all freak out like we're way behind when we're really not.
We're very close to the subject.
Oh, it's so early, and we're so close to the subject. And like,
I mean, we work in media and in tech.
And what kills me is, you know, you'll go to one of those Twitter threads, and like you went through the example of trying to have an accountant in the Big Apple with all this kind of stuff. And then you were like, it wasn't that good, so we had to make small refinements. Like the person on Twitter is just like, I gave it this prompt, and here it is, and they forget the 15 other steps you went through to arrive at that final iteration. So it just makes you feel bad about it. Like it kind of reminds me of I read these CEO blogs or leadership blogs or books or whatever, and then when you start to read so much stuff, you're like, oh my gosh, I should be doing all these things. But then you take a step back and you're like, wait, that's advice from 20 different people. All 20 of those people aren't doing all of the things that all 20 of those people are doing. And so it's really unfair for me to like internalize all of that and feel less than as if I'm not doing it. I feel like that's happening with AI right now.
Yeah, it's the flood of the information, definitely intimidating. Then in education, enabling customized learning experiences and individualized tutor experiences. That's a really cool concept because like, how do you learn? What's your best method? And now AI can create a program or a learning, syllabus that's for you and what's going to work best for you. Like that's a really cool application.
And then even in school, like, are you a little behind in math versus the other kids? Maybe we can put more time into that. That's a really cool application. I like that. That kind of levels the education playing field and solves. Very interesting.
Yeah. And then in medicine, they're talking about analysis of diseases, simulated experiments, just as good as a real doctor.
Please. I can't wait for that to be just mass adopted. That's going to be amazing.
I just wait for the day. I think it was Fahrenheit 451. Is that the book, right? Where like, they just like, they have a body screening thing. Like they just stick you in it and it just like analyzes your whole body and is like, that's where the disease thing is. And then it goes and fixes it. Right. I want there to just be a thing where you just walk in and it does like, you plug the thing into your car and it's like, hey, that tire needs air and this oil change needs to happen. And just plug me into some machine and tell me like what's going on in the body. Where is there a risk? Where is there a virus? Your computer scans itself for viruses. Like, do that for humans.
I think there's some company coming out with at least the detection part of that, not the hit a button and it fixes whatever, but that first part of it, I think that's like coming on the scene, and there are a couple of facilities available in like the Bay Area. I'm totally blanking on the name of the company. I wish I could remember it, but you're onto something. I think, and I feel much better having something that's scanning in a really intense way and is plugged in with like massive database to identify something and let me know what's wrong with it. That feels way safer. You know, no offense to doctors or anything like that, but not every doctor got a 4.0, and and they're busy. They're busy people,
and not all went to the best schools either.
Yeah, they're tired. They're busy.
And then obviously in business, it's everything from big data to customer experience to operational efficiency. I mean, it's just boundless. So
everywhere in business.
So how has it been utilized? The last time we spoke, you know, we had ChatGPT takes a CPA exam. There was a whole bunch of news for about a month straight about how it failed and it could not pass the exam. Well, introducing 4.0.
And we saw that, man, right?
Yeah.
As we were doing this exercise, 3.5 got a lot of the questions wrong, and then 4 passed them. So I guess not all that surprising to see this.
Yeah, ChatGPT retook the practice CPA exam after failing the first time. Not so different than people who actually take the exam. 50%.
That's a great line.
50% of the people pass anyway, so it's just like a human.
I thought that was really funny.
And then the major difference was that this time it used 4.0. And audit, it got an 87.5, and BEC an 85.7, FAR a 78, and in Reg an 82.
So what does this tell you?
It's happening quick. I mean, it's a 1 month turnaround. That's about what I got on all of my parts. I think I did a little bit better. I actually did a little bit better.
So I think the scores here are really interesting specifically. So, right, you look at audit, and that's a lot of rule memorization, and I think a subject that would be easier to automate, and this is a really good potential application. We've talked about how much some of the big 4 firms are investing in AI and the ability to automate a lot of the audit part of it, which can be pretty straightforward. And so I'm not all that surprised that's the highest score that came back. Conversely, you move down into FAR, where there's a little more judgment with things. How do we apply business judgment to this transaction and book the journal entries and all that kind of the financial reporting side of it? That came in with the lowest score. So I don't know, maybe we can look at this as a proxy for like how much human judgment is required for something, and really where's the most like job security going to be at the end of the day. And we all know auditors are overworked to no end. So I really hope this is like a sign that we can automate a lot of audit work and allow auditors to be more effective at what they do.
The encouraging thing too is that FAR is the hardest, and it was the most difficult for me as well. And it's good to know that me and ChatGPT 4 are on the same.
You got 78?
I got an 80 actually.
Oh, you beat GPT. All right. Well, it beat me. I got a 75, and here I am running FloQast.
But I think I had a 92 in audit. So
there you go. Yeah. Show off. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So the interesting thing about how they did this though, and this talks about how AI actually works. So they talk about in this article the 0 shot, the 10 shot priming, and then the chain thought prompting.
Tell me more.
So through 0 shot, there's no context. It just feeds questions and is just like, answer these questions. And how does ChatGPT respond to those questions?
Do you know if they gave them the multiple choice options or if it was just like spit out the answer?
I believe they asked the multiple choice options. They must have given them
multiple choice, right? Okay.
Yeah. The 10 shot is priming it with 10 sample accounting questions. So it just said like, started to get it kind of warmed up, essentially. It's like taking some swings before you get up there cold.
Okay.
And then the chain thought prompting is 10 questions with step-by-step breakdown. You're basically teaching it how to answer the question. And once you taught it how to answer the question, that's when it performed the best.
Okay, got it.
So it still fails with the 0 shot if you're just like, here's a question, answer it, because it has no context or no idea. And this is apparently the big thing that ChatGPT is learning on is how does it remember stuff? In the article, I actually talked about an analogy, how it's like it's a super talented intern that has no ability to remember anything that it's being taught. It's just super talented. Now you have to get it to the point where it actually starts like remembering the things that it's learned, and then starts to incorporate those learnings into, it's kind of like machine learning where it rejuvenates itself.
Yeah.
And then it's able to teach itself from the mistakes that it makes and from what it gets correct. And so by doing this it's chain of thought prompting is what it's called, where it's like, here's a question, here's the steps to get to the answer, now here's 10 questions. And now it uses that thought process that you taught it how to answer the questions in order to answer the other ones.
this very much, so first of all, I think it's funny we're going to see a bunch of these names of like codifying things that you do. So chain of thought prompting apparently is a little thing that's going to enter our vernacular here. But this very much supports our CTO's take on AI actually. So he's like the 0 shot, no context thing, that's going to take a really long time. 10 shot, prime it up. Once you get into the 10 shot and the chain of thought prompting, that's where his theory really comes out, where you have to leverage AI, you need to really understand the subject and be an expert at it in the judgment side of it. So he uses the computer science field. Like the fact I know nothing about computer science, so I wouldn't even know how to begin to give it a chain of thought prompting thing. But in accounting, I think of a really good example. Our controller, Greg, and I were just messing around with this, and we were like, hey, can we book a bunch of lease journal entries?
Sure.
So we started to do some of that. It got the first question wrong, and it got it wrong the first time. And then I guess we sort of just instinctively started doing a chain of thought
Explaining
prompting.
it,
I'm
yeah.
thinking back to, I mean, it wasn't called a chain of thought prompt back then, but we started walking through it and being like, wait, why did you do it this way? And here's how it could be done. You just start going through it. And then it ultimately spit out the right answer after probably like a 10 prompt question, like ballpark, maybe 10, 12, kind of back and forth prompts. It ultimately got to the right answer, but there's no way we could have gotten there if we didn't know anything about accounting, right? So so it's interesting where I think, again, it's an example of like making somebody who has baseline knowledge more productive because they can use AI for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool benefit of like you become the professor. You have a classroom of bots, and you have to just teach the bots how to think the way that you would think, and then it can do the stuff for you.
That comparison to a really smart intern is really good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that was a good one. A lot of talent, just got to learn how to remember. Now for some fun little break here. Have you read it? And this is interesting here.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about it this week.
So I don't know if anybody's heard about this, but it just happened this week. The June 12th protest, it was the Reddit Blackout. And so this is essentially where a couple months ago, and I just got debriefed on, like I knew the high level context, and Glassman gave me a little more debrief because he's a little more into the Reddit community.
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah. And basically Reddit came a few months ago and said, hey, we're going to be introducing fees to third-party app developers that use our API.
Okay.
Which I'm like, all right, that makes sense, I think. And then, so there's this one user called Apollo who apparently recorded all the phone calls that he had. He has one of the channels there, and also created his own third-party app, which it is better apparently than the Reddit. A lot of people don't like the Reddit app. They don't think it's good for their browsing purposes. So that's why these third-party app, people. There could be somebody doesn't like the way that the Google Gmail app is set up, right? They go ahead and they make an email app that works better than the mail.
So just the front end on top of the Reddit.
Somebody doesn't like the Weather Channel app, so they have like another weather app that they make that uses the same data that it pulls because they're not weathermen, but at least it presents it in a more user-friendly experience, whatever it is, right? Easier browsing, easier identification of groups and whatnot. And so it obviously has to use the API of the initial app that it's scraping the data from and pulling, and something to do with like however many times you call upon the API, like that's how you were going to get charged. And Reddit claimed that they were going to do it very fair, but basically like they never said anything, and now all of a sudden they just told everybody what the fees were going to be as of the beginning of June, and said, hey, by the way, this becomes active as of June 30th. Ooh. So all of a sudden these app developers are like, we don't have time to like redo our entire app to become more efficient with how often we call on the API. Or figure out a different business model, how we're going to operate. So basically, Reddit pulled a Wall Street Bets. The users of Reddit and all the mods specifically pulled the Wall Street Bets with the GameStop thing, which is like we're holding the line. They all bound together and said we're blacking out Reddit and we're not going to use it. We're shutting down all these groups for 48 hours, basically boycotting the Reddit app in order to bond, like basically in solidarity with the third-party app developers, and saying like, no, we much prefer these third-party app developers. This is messed up. And this guy Apollo from his channel
led the charge.
Because the CEO of it, this is where it gets shady. It's like normally I feel like, well, honestly, like if I'm Reddit, it's my money, it's my app. Yeah. Like if you want to use it, like you got to pay up. You got to pay me. But apparently it's because they said it was going to be very fair, and it's not going to be like what apparently Twitter's did the same thing with third parties that have their own versions of the Twitter app that they can use to feed news feeds and whatnot. But this is supposed to be more fair and even. And then the CEO came out and said like, oh, this guy Apollo, he's like very hostile and he's taking this approach. The guy recorded every phone call that he had. and he's just been distributing and sharing with it, and everybody can see that like basically Reddit's making up lies about this guy to kind of like try to throw him under the bus and say like no, this is try to disrupt the movement because he's kind of the leader of this movement. And
interesting. So what are the calls are with this Apollo guy and the CEO directly?
Yeah, whoever's representatives at Reddit.
Kind of shady to be recording the calls. I'll just throw that.
But I mean, I'm not sure if this is the Reddit community. Like, if you're the owners of Reddit, you have to know like the people who are on Reddit are savages in this sort of way.
Totally, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I don't think so. Do they discuss the purpose of this third-party fee? I have my guess on why they did it. I don't think it's to screw over guys like Apollo. If I'm gonna take a defend Reddit stance here.
So they want their money, right? I mean, it's our app. You're making money through using our app API, so we're going to charge you for doing so.
So I actually think that the reason Reddit made the decision to start charging for this is because OpenAI and others were scraping their entire database and using it to produce results that produce value for other people. And so either Reddit monetizes it or allows another company to monetize it. And if you're a user of Reddit, and it's a public forum, I don't know how you feel about, do you want Reddit to monetize it or do you want OpenAI to monetize it? Someone's going to monetize your data and everything you're posting on there.
Yeah.
And I get how you, like, as the person directly building an app, think, oh, they're trying to screw me. But no offense to the tiny little app developer, I think it was much bigger than them and more about these massive open source models like OpenAI and Bard using their data and all the words that are typed into Reddit, which are a lot of words that the LLM can use.
That's a good point.
To stop them from basically just accessing free stuff.
That's a really good perspective, a good point. I mean, apparently this guy Apollo was going to get slammed like $20 million a month in having in what it would cost to operate because they said his coding was like inefficient and it had to pull on the API too many times or whatever it was. But that's a really good hot take.
Yeah, that, I mean, imagine if they think this guy's pulling on it too much. OpenAI is pulling on everything all the time. That's a lot. So all that said, I do think it's really unfair to give a 3-week turnaround time to reduce or rewrite your code so it's fewer API calls. That feels like not a good way to partner with it. I wonder if I haven't heard the calls obviously, so I do wonder if Reddit will kind of do right by them and think about the different partners differently because I think it's fair to you kind of need to have an extreme response to what's going on, but don't apply that extreme response to the people who've been working with you for a long time. They did
say it was going to be individualized based on the developer and whatnot. So it's just, I think that people are mad that they're not holding true to what they said. They said, okay, we understand you're going to start charging fees.
It's interesting that their original positioning was we're going to be fair about it. I actually think the better positioning would have been like, we're going to be unfair about it. Right?
You just
the people who have been working with us for a while, like we're gonna hook you up and make right by you, but we have this new threat where we need to monetize this. Or like, imagine if, so let's just say people get pissed and Reddit says we're not going to charge anything. Okay, fine. The risk for Reddit then is that people don't log on to Reddit anymore to get information, thus heavily reducing their advertising revenue and then not as able to continue as a going operation. So, or as a going concern. Do you really, as a user of Reddit, do you really want that to go away? Do you really want there to be an existential threat to Reddit and their ability to continue as an organization? I don't think so. No. So maybe not seeing the forest through the trees here, and I get how if you're someone who's had an app with them for a while, you'd be livid about this because I'll tell you something, one of our ERP partners is trying to do the exact same thing to us, trying to charge on a per API call fee, and it's like, that's messed up to pull the rug. They're being very good about it and giving us a lot of time to rethink stuff and being flexible and negotiating. People are getting grandfathered in if you've been working with them for a while, so they're being unfair, which I think is fair. In this situation, oddly enough, and maybe Reddit takes a similar approach, and it's like you can smooth this stuff over, and so hopefully a short-term little blunder here, and then everyone moves on because it does present an actual threat to Reddit, and I don't think any Reddit user wants Reddit to go away.
What I thought was really funny is what's
the explanation here? Now I want to hear.
Well, it was just the response, which I thought was really funny. Is Hollywood accounting. The best protest would be for every single sub except for accounting to go dark. It's one thing for there to be no content on Reddit, but it would be even worse if there were to only be accounting content.
That's really good.
It's like when you get bad service at a restaurant and you tip a nickel instead of nothing. It's like just it's just a stick. Also, it would be on brand for accountants to still be available when everybody else is offline.
I like that you gave this one an upvote too.
Yeah.
I could see the upvote there.
So I just thought that was a funny way that they were approaching that.
Good
but
poll. I like. I like those.
We'll be tracking that. So this video has been sent to me a whole bunch, and I realized we got to actually speed things up a little bit here. But
oh man,
accountants when they go to Disneyland.
I wonder how much they pay in payroll for all the people just like stand here and watch people swipe their cards. Oh my gosh, there's gotta be like 500 people here just right now in this moment. At like $150 a ticket, we're talking like 500 people. It's like $75,000.
Yep, this is my experience at Disney. Totally.
I see these all over the park. They gotta be like 5 years old or so. So they're definitely paid off. That's like pure profit. The food cart has like its own books and records, or if like all the food carts in this park combine their records, or like across all the parks. That'd be insane. My gosh,
it's by park.
so much inventory sitting on these shelves. And this is just one store. Inventory management must be a nightmare. I bet that the utility bill for like just this section of the park is probably more than I'll ever pay in my lifetime. I feel like the construction cost for this place would be like so much higher than anywhere else because it uses all this like weird material.
So what you thinking about?
Magic of Disney.
So it's essentially, you know, what the point is like it's just talking about the personality of like these are the things that you think. When I go to concerts, I'm like, geez, there's like 50,000 people here. They each paid $100 a ticket. This place is bringing in $5 million right now.
Okay, so that's I didn't know if it was an accountant thing or an entrepreneur thing, but that's definitely like how my brain works. At all these places as well.
Yeah, and it's just like the analyze. And even I'm watching TV films or I'm watching a movie, and I'm thinking about like what that apartment costs to rent. And I'm like, what do these people's job do? I'm like, I wonder how much he's making. If he's going to the bar every single day, they always get like 3 drinks or whatever. I mean, maybe they're regulars, so maybe they get some buybacks. And like, this is what I'm thinking about. Like, how are these people affording this lifestyle? And like, following the money.
It's a TV show.
It's a TV
show.
Not. Right.
Friends.
But that's what we're thinking about, you know?
That's one of the best jokes when starving actors could afford an apartment in New York still, the days of Friends. So my family, very big into Disney. Financially, one of the biggest gripes I have at Disneyland is the dads who wear the shirts that say most expensive day ever. Mm-hmm. Just like, if you're ever considering doing that, just don't. You don't need to make your kids feel bad about being there. And then the other point of irony I realize is how much did you spend on that shirt to complain about how much money you're spending at Disneyland on any given day? Yeah. So anyway, just personal gripe of mine is these most expensive day ever shirts at Disneyland. I don't like them.
Well, that's like the cultural thing too. And I talked about this, I remember like a philosophy through film class, and then we talk about it with like stress in the workplace and having the work-life balance. Mm-hmm. If you're so stressed about your vacation trips, like maybe you shouldn't go on it or do something else. It's like, we're at Disney, we're gonna have a good time. You're gonna have a good time.
I better see a smile on that face.
As you're crying, like, never be that. All right, let's move on to that. Let's move on to that's concerning.
Oh boy, good concerning section today.
Yeah, so this is concerning. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The SEC sued Binance, alleging the overseas company operated an illegal trading platform in the U.S. and misused customers' funds. And this is like happening nonstop. All of these crypto exchanges just misusing funds. Everybody's out. What's going on?
Like, if anyone thought Binance was the good actor in this space after the FTX collapse, I don't know what else we can sell you on that one. But yeah, I feel like this is the beginning of the end for quite a few of these exchanges, and is going to be really bad for crypto overall. But
yeah,
like on list of not surprising things, here you go.
I mean, wasn't Binance the one that like you couldn't even get an account? Like I remember, I think at one point I was trying to make a Binance account. Like I couldn't get in. I wasn't an early enough adopter, and then like you had to be like a specialty individual in order to even make it. Like it wasn't for the regular consumer. I had to just go to what's the other one? Crypto.
Coinbase.
Coinbase. Yeah.
So I think you're nailing something here. So like Binance did some shady things to be able to get investors in the U.S. and I think they did a really good job of narrowing it to like accredited investors to try to work their way around that. And I don't really know exactly what changed, but like, I don't know. You know, this guy did like a rug pull on FTX to take them out in a pretty shady way. And so to think that everything was above bar within Binance heading into this, it's kind of a fool's errand. So not all that surprised. And I also think it's a really interesting sign that the SEC is getting so interested in all of this. I think crypto's in for a really tough run because it's in the crosshairs of the SEC, and the SEC does not mess around.
Yeah, and this just leaves it to me like, well, so do I just stay out of the game for now? Is that the safe play? Probably.
Yeah. This goes back to my original take on all of crypto was just like, yeah, this is super interesting, but the people with the most to lose from crypto taking over also happen to have the most money and power in the world, and it's not going to go easily. And I think we're seeing all those forces come into play now.
Yeah,
using the SEC
a colleague
as
of my
the main gun for taking care of that.
Colleague of mine, Joe Brunsman, he had a quote that he did on a video he was delivering. He's big into the security and crypto stuff, and he was like, "The people with the money and the power and the guns are not going to just give it up. That's the people I'm hedging my bets with."
Yeah, they're not going to be like, "Oh, this centralized currency thing is really cool. Yeah, let's do that." It's like, nah, they like this fiat currency thing. It's working out really well. Yeah, they're going to keep that going.
So just so people are aware, the lawsuit accuses the owner with diverting the money to a trading firm he controlled in order to make Binance's volume appear larger than it was. Sounds very Enron-y. Binance was also allegedly concealed that it commingled billions of dollars in customer assets and sent them to another controlled trading firm. The SEC asked a federal judge to freeze Binance's assets. The company denied allegations that users were at risk and said that it hasn't had any major outflows of funds, adding that all customer assets in Binance and Binance affiliate platforms are safe and stable.
I would not hold crypto assets in any of these exchanges. The one I do feel differently about is Coinbase, though, because they are a publicly traded company. I think they adhere to a lot of this. So if you're on any of those other exchanges, like, I think the risk of it going to zero or just not being available to you to withdraw a run on the crypto exchange, if you will, I think is a very real possibility. So I wouldn't hold. Whatever. This is not financial advice. I'm an inactive CPA. I can't do any of this stuff, but personally, I do not have any money on Binance.
Yeah, me neither. So take with that what you will.
Oh, SPACs.
SPACs, insiders at companies that went public via SPACs sold shares worth $22 billion through well-timed trades. What's the deal with SPACs? I feel like I keep hearing about this.
So SPACs, all right, so this is for those who aren't, it's a special purpose acquisition company, and some people will go out and raise a ton of money and create a public company that's just a shell company. Shell Corp to plug the shirt there. So then they'll go out, and we got calls from a bunch of SPACs at FloQast like, hey, are you interested in becoming a public company? We can acquire you, basically, and then you ring the bell and you're a publicly traded company just like that. And so a lot of companies went public via a SPAC, but had like no runway for getting SOX compliant, for example, and weren't fully vetted by like bankers to make a good decision as an investment company. So if you go public via SPAC, it's about convincing one small group of investors who are sitting on a lot of money to be the acquisition target. And they're actually more so trying to sell you on doing it. If you go public via a regular process where you're building a book of banks to invest in you, they're all doing their due diligence and making sure you're a good investment in a good company, because they're going to take the IPO shares that they get in your company, turn around, sell it to all of their clients who are their wealth management clients, and they don't want to look like idiots and have a stock price go down afterwards. So they really vet you and go through diligence. So it's sort of this like tale of two types of investments. And unsurprisingly, the ones that were not vetted by like real financial bank institutions performed worse than the ones who went through that whole process. And also, on the SPAC side, it's like there's a higher risk of error, material weakness, all that good stuff, because they just didn't have as much time to get their processes cleaned up. All that said, again, I'm going to go with kind of defending some of this. I'm not all that surprised that there was a bunch of sales after companies went public and that they're worth $23 billion through well-timed trades is the perception of it. The reality is a lot of companies went public via SPAC during the boom times. When you go public, you have a lot of employees who have been there for a while and have been locked up and are ready to liquidate some of their shares, founders included as well. So you just sort of naturally have a lot of sales after you go public. And then it can be perceived as well-timed, because guess that was at the top of the market and everything's fallen off since then. So like, of course you can perceive it as well-timed. Sure. So I don't know, there's me ripping apart a headline like a little bit more. It's not as, I think, nefarious as it seems, but all that said, like there's some sketchy stuff that happened. In
well, so I mean, it seems like it's because it's a quick flip. It's like flipping a house, and it's like, well, you didn't even live in it. It's like, yeah, well, I bought it to sell it. Like, and so who's buying it? So if a company, because the first thing, and maybe this is the accountant brain, but I'm thinking like, if a company's just getting like swept up through a SPAC in order to go public, they obviously, as you mentioned, don't have all of those controls in place, and they haven't built themselves up to be that scalable, stable business that like, it's just like the talented intern that hasn't proven itself yet, and we're gonna throw them in the big stage, and it's who's the guy from Moneyball?
Dave Podesta?
No,
who are you talking about? Billy Bean?
Billy Bean.
Yeah.
And you throw all the money behind it and then gets to the big leagues and flops.
It's,
right. And so like, I'm not going to throw all my eggs in that basket. I mean, some people are willing to risk it and be like, oh, maybe this will pan out. But like the people that are making their deal is the agent who makes this big signing and then they collect their piece. And that's what I feel like the people who convince a company to go public through a SPAC.
That's a decent comparison. I mean,
who's buying it though after though? Like
so,
who are they getting to foot the bill?
So they will. So when you go public, you say, hey, I want to raise $200 million or something. You come up with a set number that you want to raise. The banks then commit to funding that amount, and you build up a book of business to guarantee you have the 200. Then you go public, and then there's some amount available to the public to then purchase from there. Or a lot of the bank's clients will start selling thereafter, and that's made now publicly available as float. So rather than getting the banks to commit all 200, you just have some small group of people who raise $200 million, do the whole 200. Then you go public, they start to release some shares, you have some public float, and then it's just public, like individual investors can start buying shares in something.
Are these companies making enough money more than how much they're apparently worth?
All just depends. I mean, you look at every company's different, but yeah, you go back and look at the ones that went public via SPACs, like the stock prices are down on a lot of them. Again, back to just like not as much vetting on the quality of the business overall. They're not all bad, to say, not all bad, but I did plenty of webinars and presentations on going public via SPAC versus traditional method back in the day, and looking at the types of companies that were doing it and the material weaknesses they had coming out of it. And yeah, it's definitely a tale of two types of IPOs around that.
Well, that's a whole big thing to dive into at some point.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And the other thing is like, it's perceived as a new thing, but this is actually a vehicle that was created in the 80s. It's been around forever. It's in vogue when there's money flying everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it was in vogue in 2021.
Yeah.
There you go.
The money flying era. Now it's the money dying era.
Yes. Oh man, on that note.
Grant Thornton lays off 300. And what I thought was interesting about this is just that it's about 3% of its staff. I'm an old GT guy, so this is close to home for me, right? This mostly in advisory, which is expected, but also said the tax business line. And that is something I thought was interesting. And I'm wondering if that has anything to do with perhaps automation of certain tasks.
I think you're right. I think you're picking apart the headline real well there. Yeah. It's part business slowdown, not as much consulting advisory work to be had. A great reason why going into audit is really good. Audits don't go away. So that's for sure. And then on the tax side, man, I hope we can get a lot of these more simplistic tax returns automated. And I have to imagine Grant Thornton has a good mix of like complex tax clients, but then also pretty simplistic tax clients where they can do a lot with AI to take care of that. So I think you're probably right.
Yeah. So the CEO Seth Siegel told a town hall meeting earlier this month that the firm was seeing softening demand in some of its business divisions. I would imagine the advisory stuff. According to the Wall Street Journal, other firms have also been cutting back in recent months, including EY, which laid off 3,000 employees in April. I think we touched on that last couple.
My alumni,
mostly on the consulting side, and Cole plans to split the consulting and audit sides of the global network, as well as KPMG, which laid off 700 in advisory, close to 2% of its staff in February. And I think we sort of touched on that during the prior FinTech Flo episodes. But obviously, the whole splitting thing has been a major discussion because there's so much business that's lost from a consulting side because you're not able to take on the business advisory work because you perform the audit, and that becomes an independence issue. But yeah, I mean, consulting as a whole is taking. I saw this book. It's called The Big Con on Amazon, and I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
But the headline was basically about how like the consulting industry is like destroying the economy and destroying business, and it's making everybody's reliant on what the next McKinsey report is going to be, and what KPMG says on their recent business advisory survey that they did, and like become way too reliant on this sort of service, which then gets overcharged, and then people feel it's the hospital stuff with the pandemic too, where you pay more to bring in a travel nurse than to just pay the nurses who already live there like more money to just stay there. Instead, you're giving the stipend and you're paying the travel nurse fee, and everybody's just going to the different cities and just swapping cities, and they're making a killing off of it. And
I've been thinking about this consultant and like analysis type thing a lot lately. Why do you think people are so interested in bringing on a McKinsey to help do something?
I think it's a combination of one, being lazy, and two, having imposter syndrome of some sort. People don't want to make I think people don't want to make decisions, and I think that they want to have somebody else tell them what to do, which is, I mean, anybody can make any decision. It's just somebody's got to step up and be the one who owns it and says, I'm making this decision. And if it pans out, you're the hero, and if it flops, then it sucks. But this is get rid of accountability. We brought in a consultant that told us this would be the best move.
You are 100% spot on. It's not having to take the responsibility for making a poor decision and having somebody else to throw under the bus if it doesn't work out. That's like deadly for organizations, right? You become so slow. People are afraid to take risk, and you just get just frozen with any decision that comes up. And you gotta, I don't know. It's interesting. There's probably a way to look at a correlation between consulting fees and decision-making capabilities at a company.
Yeah.
The more you spend on consultants, the less an ability to make decisions you have as a company. And it's something at FloQast, I'm just like, no, I don't want to do another study. I want to do this. Just like make a call and go for it. Let's do it. And it's a way, like, faster way to operate. But everyone has to be okay with failing, because you're not going to be right 100% of the time. And I think that's the important caveat here. But spot on. Yep. Punt responsibility.
Right. And all right. So finish it up with some fun stuff. How should we account for memes? Just a couple quick ones here. I thought this one was really funny. So we got here a picture of Oprah giving everybody cars, I believe. And the top says, "Why are accountants always so calm, composed, and methodical?"
They got strong internal controls. Good stuff. I like it. Nice pun. Good dad joke. Good accountant joke there. Yeah. Very well played.
Timely, given the compliance and controls discussion.
Exactly, yes.
And then this last one here. What actor is this again?
It's Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck, that classic, just like really stressed out, smoking a cigarette outside of I don't know if it's in a movie or if it's like outside of a set.
Looks like he's out front of like an office.
Yeah, it seems like he's like taking a break from set, and he's like, "Gosh, this has been a rough day." And this is from the Big Four tweets. AI will replace accountants, and he's just like, "God, I hope so."
I actually think it's right. It's funny because it's true. We need AI to replace some accountants. We've talked about this on prior episodes. Like,
I think this is the account. Some of this is the accounts being like, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Because how many people went into accounting because it's just like, this is the safe thing to do, and like they would do something else if they were pushed beyond the barriers of just what they know. And again, I think it's a great foundation. We talk about this all the time. We're only elevating accounting here. It's a great foundation and a base. It's just how you choose to use it. And if you keep using it to just do mundane tasks that drive you insane but are just necessary to get done because it's safe and secure, eventually you'll get kind of left behind in the dust. But now in this case, it forces you. It's like, well, sorry, that job's not available anymore. So figure out how to think more future-oriented.
Yeah, and something a little more interesting. And I think the other way to interpret this is AI will replace accounting hours and make it so I don't have to work as much, which I certainly hope I hope that's true for sure. But I like this one a lot. It's funny.
But yeah, if the option's not available, then I don't have to feel guilty about it. Like I do get paralysis from analysis a lot of the time, and what's the best day? I'd rather you just take away the options. I don't have an option, so this is what I got to do. And now I can go all in on it and not be FOMOing over the potential missed opportunity.
Huh?
So, yeah, that is our conclusion of the FinTech Flo episode. This has been a fun one with a lot of great insights, especially on the entrepreneurial stuff. I mean, I find that stuff, and I think this is a thing to lean into, is can we get insight into that range of like the unknown land? You watch a movie and it's just like, I'm going to start a business, and then it flips to the next scene and it's like in charge of this big company. But what about the story that it takes to get there?
Yeah. The overnight success. Last week I had somebody say like, wow, that happened so fast. It's like, nah, it's been 10 years. Yeah. It doesn't feel real fast.
Right. Yeah, it's a full 10 years. So that's what it went. And you age a bunch over the course of that process.
Yep. Was recently told my LinkedIn picture is misleading, so I gotta update that to an older Mike.
I am glad we finally have the non-Ivy League pictures. We have the official new photo shoot pictures that you have being distributed.
I do miss the I. I'm a little nostalgic about the Ivy, but the new ones are way better. So
I was just like, God, if I see one more article with the same picture, like I've been seeing this for 2 years straight, like every time the comms post in the thing, it's the same damn picture. I'm like, I was like, I will bring you over here and we'll do 100 pictures, so every article is going to have a different headshot.
There you go.
But cool. We got it. So did this? Do you think this elevates the current state of the industry, or?
I think we elevated. I mean, I'm bummed to hear about layoffs at the firms, but it's also, another point of evidence that audit's a good field to be
Yeah.
in, still very secure. And I still hope that, I think it's very hopeful that AI is going to come in and automate a lot of that lame audit work and make that an even more rewarding profession than it is today. So
Yeah, and I think the big thing learning here too, and I think a big takeaway for everybody at home is like, we did a lot of just accidentally dissecting these headlines and just showing like, use that professional skepticism that and look beyond. Josh likes to talk about this a lot, the note behind the note.
Yeah.
And what exactly is this meaning? So I mean, we talked about with Reddit, right? Is there the actual play of like, the little guys are the ones taking the hit, but it's not really intended for them.
yeah, Reddit's not dumb. They're not going to make a decision just to piss off all their main, all the mods and users and stuff. Like that's not the intention behind it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and think about like, if you were running Reddit, why would you make this decision?
Right.
And there's probably a good reason they make that call.
Yeah.
Because like I said, people who run Reddit are not dumb.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, and then the skepticism behind the PR and the marketing that goes into all of this AI, with the vaporware and all that sort of stuff. So use your professional skepticism and go about on your week through this this June gloom that we're facing, and
Good call.
have some optimism for the future.
All right. Well, thanks for joining this week. Thanks for hosting, Drew.
Yeah, thanks for co-hosting. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks for tuning into the FinTech Flow. I want to give you a heads up that if you are looking for CPE credits, this is eligible for 1 hour. If you'd like to learn more, check out the link in our description to get those credits.